So when looking at the article, I took away four big topics, one being that change is inevitable. So it's important that we're staying up to date with what's going on in healthcare through research as we're taking care of these individuals. And so it's up to us to stay on top of the new research and know that what we're providing is proven as best therapy. So I think that's super important and we need to be the ones to implement those changes and prove our worth as occupational therapists and healthcare professionals. I thought a really powerful statement that came from the article was that continued education fosters development and competency. And second takeaway being informal learning opportunities are important. For me specifically, I thought about a way that I could make sure that I'm engaging in informal learning opportunities when I graduate, as we're not going to be surrounded by schoolwork and, a constant opportunity to dig into more research. So for me, informal learning opportunities in the future look like maybe having a fieldwork student and getting to learn from them, being open to feedback from them about, hey, I'm in school right now and this is what I'm learning as what works best. And of course, we're always going to look into it ourselves as well, but just being open to those learning opportunities. And it could also be from a coworker. A third takeaway from the article was to never feel like you're the expert in something, because that can oftentimes make us very complacent with where we are instead of growing further. So instead of seeing a patient that has a diagnosis we've seen all the time, so maybe somebody with a stroke with like right-sided hemiparesis, we think, oh, I've seen this so many times and I know which interventions to do, and you go and you grab your normal materials that you're going to use for the intervention. But instead, I think we should say, well, let me see if there is more research out constantly, like weekly, daily even, if we have the time. I think it's super important. And to even talk to coworkers about, this is what I normally do with someone with this diagnosis, but what do you do? And just always being open to learning, because learning is growth, and growth is super important within professions as things are always changing. My last takeaway was that reflection is an important tool in growth. So having a coworker or a fieldwork student to help you engage in that process of reflection is really good, and it helps us recognize what we're doing well and then things that we can change. So getting into the questions, the first question was, what's something that you've done in your DEC that you'll remember for the rest of your life? I said just ultimately providing the education to the individuals that didn't previously have that education has been life-changing for me, because I've seen what an impact it can have. So for a more specific example, I shared information with an individual a couple weeks ago that's in a nursing home and has been kind of stuck in this nursing home for 7 years. And he's young, and he was told he had a complete spinal cord injury, and so for a couple years in a high-level spinal cord injury where he was only needing help with assisted breathing, and so he had pretty much nothing. But he, within the last year or two, has started gaining a lot of different movements back, and so he's thinking, it was an incomplete spinal cord injury, but he's just stuck in this nursing home, and he doesn't know who to go to or even how to advocate for himself, or what questions to ask to try and get the therapy that he feels that he needs to be able to progress further. So something as simple as that of I helped him find the phone numbers and the emails to people within his facility to email, and I helped him edit and write up something to send to advocate for himself for more therapy, or for any therapy, because he hadn't gotten any therapy in 7 years because he didn't qualify. So once he got in contact with those right people, it was about a week ago that he shared that he is now moving along to a rehab facility and is going to be getting a lot of rehab. So he was just so excited about that, and I think it just reinforces the simple skill of teaching advocacy to someone that feels helpless and too uneducated to do anything about it can really change a life. Number two, something that I accomplished on my DEC that I'm proud of, making connections and relationships with the staffs and the individuals with spinal cord injuries during the social hour time has been a huge accomplishment for me, because that was my biggest barrier coming in. I was really nervous about how I would be building rapport when everything was remote, and, how am I going to show empathy, and when I can't, put my hand on someone and tell them that I'm here for them. So it's still constantly something that I'm trying to get better at and overcome, but it's also something that I feel like I've accomplished a lot. I've made really good relationships with some of the individuals, and I'm really proud of that. Number 3, what area do I feel that I've made my biggest improvements? Digging into video resources. I never really used videos as resources like YouTube, or there's some spinal cord injury sites that have a lot of YouTube videos, and again, I never dug into those things in the past. I've always had a passion for digging into the research side of things, but I've never taken the time to watch videos to gain information, and I've just learned a lot from that, especially with spinal cord injury. I think it's super important to watch like transfer videos and what does that spinal cord injury level look like. So not only has that taught me a lot, but I'm using videos as my dissemination means. So yeah, I've made a lot of improvements in being open to learning and using videos. The 6 adjectives that I would use to describe my deck are that it's super unique, it's impactful, it is very widespread, it's encouraging to the individuals, it is cutting edge with the research, and it is positive. The skills I've developed for my professional growth now and in the future, just making connections with individuals and what that looks like, using the tool of therapeutic listening rather than just feeding them information that I think that they could use and that they might think would be helpful. I think oftentimes they already know information that we think that we should be sharing, but when you actually listen to them and their own personal experience, you realize what resources they could use and gain more from. So while no spinal cord injury is the same, no person is the same. So going forward, the skill of connecting with real people who are going through real situations is vital in not only building rapport, but also in providing the best therapy that I can. And then what's left to do in my deck, and how I'm going to accomplish it. I'm going to be disseminating my 3 education videos on InterStim, on shoulder injury prevention, and on caregiver burden, and just some tips and tricks from the OT side. And then, as I've mentioned, the relationships I've made have really helped me, as I have an individual who's actually experienced each of those topics that's going to be co-hosting with me, so that I can share the clinician side of things and the research side of things, but then they can share their own personal experience and what it's been like for them. So I think that is going to reach a wider population, I'm hoping. So that is what I have left, and the way that I will be accomplishing it is I'll be disseminating it through the Facebook United Spinal group, which has thousands of people in it. And United Spinal has not used that mode as a way to get out to people. So they're super excited about that, because they've only ever used the Facebook group just as a community type thing where they share a couple things here and there, different resources, but they've never gone live on it. So they're super excited about what that will look like and how much it will touch people or reach people. And the last question, describing how I'm applying topics from my didactic work from the OT program into my experiential component. So there's 4 big classes that I think of. One being evidence-based research. That's helped me a lot with how to dig into research and find legitimate sources and level of evidence, as far as credibility, reliability, and really knowing what sources are helpful. And then creating an all-encompassing handout to educate the individuals has been really helpful. So that class, and then therapeutic communication, has helped me a lot in creating and sustaining relationships. Health conditions has helped me a lot in knowing information on spinal cord injury, the different levels, what it looks like, which has helped me be able to be part of the conversation and understand when people are talking about their secondary diagnoses from their spinal cord injury. I understand, I'm able to keep up with it. And then the last one being health promotion. It's helped me with choosing the topic of injury prevention, because shoulder injury prevention, because it's not always about treating the secondary issues or tertiary. It's sometimes just preventing, and that's super important in the spinal cord injury population, because they already have a lot going on, and then they start getting shoulder issues because they're using them so much. So being able to step in before it becomes an issue, I think, is really helpful.